Happy Friday. Thank you for being here for our Harvest Huddle Hour. We hope you're all healthy and safe. Gosh, it's been a tough few weeks really for fires. So, we're thinking about everyone that's been displaced and just grateful that you're here with us for the next hour. Hopefully we can take your mind off of everything that's going on in the world and get you ready for beginning your upland bird hunting journey. We are going to get right into it. We started a little bit late today. We're having some video issues. Sorry about that. But again, thank you for being here. While I'm doing a little intro, why doesn't everyone just go ahead and use the chat feature and tell us where you're huddling from this afternoon and maybe which upland bird species you're excited to learn more about today. I know we were talking before we went live and we were all excited about dove season opening on Wednesday. My nephew actually brought over some jalapeno dove stuffed with bacon. It was so great. So we're excited about dove in my house. I'm Tish Palmadesi. I'm a marketing specialist with CDFW, and part of my role is being part of the Recruit, Retain, Reactivate team. Recruit, Retain, Reactivate, R3 team is what we call ourselves. And our team works to bring more Californians to hunting, fishing, foraging, shooting sports, and just getting outdoors and enjoying our resources and gaining that appreciation for everything that's around us. So these Harvest Huddle Hours, Harvest Huddle Hour H3, this is a virtual program that we use to connect with people all across the state, and we offer resources to really build your confidence and get you, our huddlers, more comfortable with the sport that you're most interested in. And speaking of what you're most interested in, let's take a look at the chat. We don't have anyone talking to us yet, but I know that you're out there, so this is great. But our huddle today is going to be on an intro to upland bird hunting, and we're going to highlight upcoming seasons for different species and different types of resources and hunts that are out there. We have two very knowledgeable panelists today. And before I introduce them, I just want to remind everyone that all of our Recruit, Retain, Reactivate Harvest Huddle Hour, R3H3s, they're recorded, including this one. So if you hear something that you like and you want to share it with someone, this episode will be available on the department's R3 page within a few days. Give us a few days to get it uploaded. That webpage is wildlife.ca.gov/R3. You're going to scroll down to the California Wild Kitchen tab, and then you'll see a link for all the Harvest Huddle Hours. And we're going to put that website in the chat so it's easier for you to find. Oh, and I see Penn Valley. Hello, interested in pheasant and quail. You're going to hear about that today. All right, before we get started, some real quick housekeeping. If you're new to Zoom, the Zoom webinar platform, I know a lot of you are using Zoom for work and school and all of that. But for the webinar platform, you can change the way your screen looks by clicking the top right icons. There are two views, gallery and presenter. Feel free to play around with it. How you make your screen look won't affect any of how our screen looks. So you do you, just whatever is going to make you happy and get you through the huddle. At the end of the session, there will be an opportunity for audience participation. We're actually counting on it. How we are going to communicate with you is through the Q&A section in the webinar. That's at the bottom of your screen. It looks like little conversation bubbles. You click on that, it'll open up a dialog box. You can then type your question, hit enter, and our moderators will get through as many questions as we can. So please ask away. As I mentioned, this session is being recorded and will be on the website that I mentioned in the coming days. Until it's up, go there and find all the past R3 recordings. We've done some really great stuff this past year. Again, the website is in the chat, but it's wildlife.ca.gov/R3 under the California Wild Kitchen tab. Now let's introduce our team. Helping us out, moderating our Q&A and answering your questions and fielding them to our presenters. We're lucky to have Robert Karam out of the Office of Communication, Education, and Outreach. He will be helping get to all of your questions, but if for some reason your question doesn't get answered, just know we might be saving it to the end to ask our presenters live. Or if it's outside of the scope of today's presentation and it doesn't get answered, feel free to just email us. Our email address is r3statewideprogram@wildlife.ca.gov. We'll add that to the chat as well. And after this presentation, I am going to send out an email with all the resources and the slideshow that our presenters are going to use today. And if you have more questions about today's presentation, about R3 in general, just reply to that email because that's the email address that information will come from. Now to our presenters. Peter Tira works as a public information officer for CDFW. Among his responsibilities are informing the public and media about California's diverse hunting and fishing opportunities, as well as acting as a spokesperson for the department on various inquiries. So he may look familiar because he's been on TV a lot, especially this past month. So he is an avid California hunter who never fully understood the appeal of upland bird hunting until he acquired his first hunting dog, an energetic female black lab named Asti Spumanti. And we'll have to ask him questions about that name later. But Asti Spumanti loved hunting upland birds more than Peter did and really introduced him to the joy and magic of the pursuit. Ben Lewis is also with CDFW. He is a CDFW Region 4 Upland Game Bird Coordinator. Region 4 is the central region serving Fresno, Kern, Kings, Madera, Monterey, San Benito, just to name a few counties. Ben received his degree in biology with an emphasis in ecology and anatomy and physiology from Cal State University, Fresno. He worked 2 seasons as a wildlife management scientific aide in the central region before accepting and moving to the Upland Game Bird Coordinator in 2008. Ben works out of Fresno and has had the opportunity to work with several game and non-game species over the past decade in a wide variety of projects. He says he has spent a substantial amount of time in the field working with upland game birds, and every day he observes and learns something new. Peter, Ben, we are so grateful to have you both here today and for you to share some of your knowledge and expertise. We're going to have you take it away. Ben was having some issues with his video, but we're hoping that that might be fixed. But if not, we can hear Ben loud and clear, hopefully. And there is some pictures of him in the presentation, so you will get to see Ben. But Peter, Ben, take it away.
All right. Let's see. Let's see if I come up this time.
There you are.
Ah, there you go.
Yay.
All right. So I guess I'll start out by saying hello to everybody and thanks for logging on. Today we're going to go over some of the basics behind upland game hunting and some of the opportunities we have here in the central region and really in the state of California. And honestly, we're kind of lucky to be in this particular state, in my opinion, just because we have the huge variety of habitats and upland game birds that you can hunt. It is true that, recently in the last few years, or actually last decade or so, we've had a decline in things like pheasant, which was, usually normally found throughout the Central Valley, but with farming practices and whatnot, numbers decrease. But we still have a number of wild bird species that have very good populations and, depending on the year, can have a phenomenal hunt. So as we were talking about earlier, dove and dove season just started, and this year is turning out to be an excellent year. All right, we had good weather. We had our dove numbers seem to be up as far as what I've seen with our banding effort compared to our success rate. So I think as long as the weather holds for the rest of the season, we'll have a few more good shoot days, and knock on wood that we won't do too bad in the late season as well. So Peter actually had just come out and got to experience one of our wildlife areas, Pillibus Wildlife Area, where we do some of the special dove hunts. And well, it was nothing short of phenomenal, especially on the opening day. So I don't know if Peter wants to.
I want all of you to apply for the Pillibus dove hunt through CDFW's special draws that you'll learn about here in a little bit. But I just wanted to say hello to everybody. Thanks for joining us. I wanted to emphasize and second Ben's point, the beauty of upland game bird hunting in California is that you can find something to hunt in pretty much every corner of the state, every type of environment. We have over a dozen huntable species. So you can find that bird that speaks to you, that style of hunting that speaks to you, that part of the state that speaks to you, whether you want to spend your time in the Sierras or the valleys or the coast or the mountains, there's something out there for you. That's the beauty of being an upland game bird hunter in California.
And whether you want to wake up, before the dawn of time sometimes and go out and set up to shoot dove, or if you want to wake up later in the day and get on a pheasant hunt, or later in the afternoon, or go call some turkey. And California's got the gambit. So he said many styles, many species, and lots of different habitats. California's pretty much from one end to the other. We have almost every major habitat type that you can imagine, other than tropical rainforest. Right? We even have temperate rainforest if you go further north, and then we have everything down in the high desert, the valley floor, mixed conifers, just about everything every major habitat or subgroup that you could think of is all, and well, other than subarctic, which I'll pass on that anyway. Yeah.
And I did see a question pop up from Tiffany about if you need a dog for dove hunting. It's a great question. You do not need a dog for dove hunting. Typically dove hunting, you're kind of past shooting or hunting areas where the birds are flying into you quite often. A dog certainly can be very helpful in finding a downed dove, especially if it falls in heavy cover and maybe it's hard to find. They blend in with the ground and the cover. They can be hard to find. That's a picture of my dog Grace in the photo. She's a chocolate lab, but I actually don't bring her dove hunting because the weather, at least, the early part of the September season, the weather's very hot. Can be over 100 degrees, certainly down by Fresno where Ben is. And that's tough on a dog, can be tough on a dog without, just the heat. So, and there can be a lot of shooting and a lot of commotion. And so sometimes it's easier without a dog for dove hunting.
Yeah. And I saw one of the questions too, that one of the nice things about upland game bird hunting is you don't need a tag for each individual species. So all you need is your upland game bird stamp or validation now. I don't think you get the actual physical stamp anymore, but with that validation, you can hunt the gambit of upland game bird species, everything from dove to turkey and pheasant to ptarmigan if you really want. So I think we'll get started and go over a little bit of at least what I do and what we do as a department. So a lot of what we do is centered around wildlife monitoring and habitat worker improvement. So we spend a lot of time in the field with the resource, trying to get numbers, whether it be numbers of a ratio of offspring to adults, or male to female, or we want to track movement to find what areas are important during either a brood season or prior to hunt season, or where the animals are during the season. So which just means a lot of time in the field working with the resource, which is pretty much why we got into this, was to spend time in the field. At least that's my favorite part of the job. But coupled with that is probably about as much time as you spend in the field, you'll spend 3 to 4 times in the office processing that data and sending it up for review and hopefully used to make decisions on the higher level as far as seasons, limits, and those kinds of things. So the other part of that was the habitat work, which is extremely important, one for the resource and then one for providing opportunity. So a lot of the habitat work that I do is directly linked to providing opportunities to hunters and to bolster the resource. So we spend a lot of time, or at least I spend a lot of time in more of the arid areas doing work on water sources, and then work on food crops or nesting habitat, things like that. And that again all leads to the providing of hunting opportunity and recreation for the public. So we also do a number of special draw hunts, some of which are centered around wild bird species, which are awesome for folks that are wanting to take that next step and to pursue wild game. And then some of the more apprentice style hunts where we're focused on getting people out and going through the basics of mechanics, and we actually plant pheasant for some of those hunts. So, and the pheasant are a nice bird, especially to get started with, because they're not super intimidating as being fast or super fast or difficult to hunt, right? And they are exciting, and you get, if you have a dog or have people that come out and work dogs with you, there's a whole nother dynamic that you get exposed to, and it's a very community-oriented kind of experience. So you get lots of volunteers out, lots of families, lots of folks, and it's usually very positive. Even if you don't get a bird, it's a very positive first experience. So we recommend those, especially for first-time hunters coming out. Take a look at some of our apprentice hunts, which are planted birds, which are available through our website, which we'll kind of go over later as far as resources. So, well, Peter, if you had anything to add.
No, I just wanted to say that Liam weighed in again. It's not Tiffany. Tiffany is his mom's name, his mom's count. So he's really fired up. But if he those apprentice pheasant hunts that Ben talked about would be a great opportunity for Liam if he hasn't actually been hunting much yet or just getting started. Those are great opportunities to look into this year.
Yeah, and especially depending on where you are, you may want to consider, there's a couple of the hunts that are a little more structured. So if you're looking for a real first time positive experience, I'd recommend something like the Ray Asbill Junior Hunt. It's a little bit of it's a pretty much a full day event where you'll go through a number of classes. They'll even have a lunch for you, and they'll have a guide and dog handlers that they'll set you up with, so you don't have to bring anything other than your shotgun and your ammunition or your shells. So, and then you'll take a number of classes, everything from wilderness classes. Sometimes they do things like Dutch oven cooking, and then black powder rifles, archery. So it's a really cool day. So.
We also have some, which we'll talk about a little bit later too. We have some licensed bird clubs in the state. These are kind of private businesses that plant birds for hunting. They typically have clays courses and restaurants and other pro shops, but they oftentimes will offer free hunts for kids who are just learning. They'll provide dog handlers all for free. So you should check into those bird clubs as well. Liam, in your area, you're going to look at like Bird's Landing. You're going to look at Comanche Hills. These are clubs that do a lot of free hunts for kids to kind of help you get started. So look into those.
Yeah. I just want to continue on a little bit more of what we do. We try not to spend too much time on this portion and kind of move on to the bread and butter of the upland stuff later, but figured it's important to kind of get an idea of what the department does, or at least what I do with the department. Like I said, we do a lot of monitoring, everything from disease issues that come up, and not just in game species. A lot of times it's pretty much anything terrestrial is in our purview, at least on the wildlife management side. So we have our aquatic folks, and then anything that hits land, we kind of get involved with. And there's the occasional crossover, but majority of it is if it walks on land, it's in our, or if it flies through the air. So, and disease outbreaks are actually super common in wild populations, right? It's kind of the natural trend where disease can move through, the population will dip and then recover. But it's important to monitor when things come through, especially if it's something novel or something that's like we're monitoring currently for chronic wasting disease, to make sure we can do whatever we can to keep it from getting established within the state. We do monitoring for trichinosis on dove. So it's if you've ever shot a dove and noticed that there's lesions or anything in its beak, there's a good chance that that's what it is. So we tend to send samples to Sacramento and do processing and figure out, if we're going to need to mitigate for any damages or what the next step will be. But knock on wood, it's not very common. It's more common with super dry years, drought years. So we have had it move through the valley at certain times of year where birds are concentrated on water sources. So, and then monitoring movement, like I said, finding out which areas and which habitat types are important for the species. And then population trends is difficult. We historically have done a lot more monitoring as far as, like I said, trends, but actually population numbers is something that we're actually transitioning to try and get better information and better numbers to justify what we do and what limits and things we set. So we have spent quite a bit of time as far as trend monitoring, but and then composition counts are important to determine breeding year, because a lot of the species that I deal with upland game birds are in our selected species, or they're limited. Their numbers are limited by the resources, right? So if we can go out from year to year and we can get an idea or figure out what the trend is going to be based on the ratio of offspring to adults, and that can give us projections for the hunt season the following year depending on conditions. So move on to the next slide, please. Another big program, since it is dove season, is our banding program. So every year, not just in California, but across the nation, we put bands on mourning doves. And the majority of this information or data that comes back that's collected, that's because of you guys out in the field, hunters, right? So if you ever shoot a dove that has a band on its leg, make sure you call and let them know location and, you know, date and time that you took the animal, and any information that you can provide them. So, and that studying that information actually gets used to set things like the bag limit. And recently, if you remember, or if you've been around long enough, you'll know that the bag limit for dove used to be 10 birds. And thanks to the information that was collected, they said, well, we can justify now an increase to a 15-bird limit. So, all right. And this is a little bit of a kind of a cool story. Well, so we currently use tags and GPS collars to monitor movement on things like deer. But you go back in technology, you know, before we had the GPS collars, we had radio collars. So you actually had to go out in the field with a unit and get close enough to get a radio signal and actually try to triangulate to figure out where that animal was. Before that, they actually put tags on deer, and then actually had to physically come across the deer. And before that, in order to try and locate the deer, they used to put bells on them. And we're talking about, you know, 40s and 50s. So it's been a while since they put bells on deer, but it is interesting to see how the technology has changed from decade to decade, to the point where now, once you lay hands on an animal, put a GPS collar on them, you don't have to actually come across that animal again to get the data. That data is sent through a satellite, and you can get live data for movement, which is really cool. And the same thing can be used for upland game birds now. We have GPS trackers and things that are small enough that you could put on a quail or a dove to find movement and track where they are, when they are, and what habitat types they're using. Next. And this is just a brief graph. We monitor a number of different species, but this is actually chukar. So chukar is one of the game bird species that was introduced in California, I want to say in the 50s, if I remember correctly. But it's a non-native species, but it is a fantastic upland game bird to hunt. And usually you say you chukar hunt the first time for fun and the rest of the times for revenge, because chukar are probably one of the more challenging game birds. The only other that I can think of would probably be ptarmigan, which is that subalpine bird. But they are about double the size of a quail, love the rocks, and love to run uphill. So you can see from the numbers, it shows you the number of adults counted versus the number of juveniles counted. And this area is actually around Ridgecrest, California, which is in the desert going toward the east side of the Sierras. So you can see there's a natural highs and lows and dips depending on rainfall and resources available. You can see this last year in 2020 was actually a fairly decent year. We had a bit of a drop off. You can see we still have about the same number of adults that were counted, but our reproduction was way, way down this year. And that's kind of a normal thing we'll see when we have a drop in resources. Reproductions will tail off and number of adults will decrease over time. But it's important to kind of keep this information and track it, see what the population trend is doing. And then some of the habitat or upland game bird work that we do in region is, like I said, based around water sources. You'll see in a couple of these pictures here, we have something called a gallinaceous guzzler. And it's pretty much a large water tank that sits underground that collects rainwater. So there's a concrete apron that has a bit of a slope. And whenever it rains or gets enough moisture, it'll run down into the mouth of the tank, which is 90% underwater and has a small opening for upland game tags. And that way it limits evaporation. It has less chance of having larger animals or things falling into the tank or drowning in the tank. But this is very, very important, especially in our more arid areas, because they are usually limited by water, right? So if we have an area that has a good population of birds during a hard drought year, those numbers will drop, but we'll still have this small island of population that survives because of the water that we're providing through these guzzlers. And then in a good year, when resources are high, we have good rain, we have good forbs and insects, and population can reproduce and have a good chick survivorship, we'll have a decent hunt year. Where if we didn't have these kind of little islands of survivorship, there's a chance that localized population could actually completely die off. And then you have to wonder, well, how long is it going to take for birds to reestablish in that area? And it could be, decades sometimes, if at all, depending on conditions. And then you'll see, actually, this is a picture of Pilibus Wildlife Area in the lower right-hand corner. It was planted with sunflower and safflower. This was a particularly good year where it usually doesn't rain enough to produce a crop without irrigation. This was a year where it rained so much that it almost seemed to overflow the field. But oh, there we go. And again, this is some pictures of the guzzler maintenance that we do. A lot of times it's just inspections to make sure it's still functioning. Actually, that's my wife in the picture, and I think I'm just in the corner of the other one there. We're just cleaning up around the apron and then blowing off any materials that may enter the mouth of the guzzler. So as much as you can pull off of the concrete apron, the better, because then you'll have less chance of filling the tank with silt and sediments. And once the tank is filled with silt and sediments, the only thing you can do is actually remove the lid and then dig it out, which is quite an undertaking. So yearly maintenance usually includes that, and just inspections. This is a guzzler that was put in, I believe, 1953 or somewhere around. So it has been around much longer than I have, and considering, I think it fared fairly well. It had a bitmol covering over the top, and over time the bitmol tends to deteriorate and start to fill the tank. So what we did is we went through and pulled the bitmol out and actually recapped it with concrete. And later, I believe we went back on this one and put in a new fiberglass tank underground to increase storage, because the older tanks were usually 400 gallons, and we recently upgraded to a different style of tank, and it holds about 1,000 gallons of water, which usually get them through the season. Next. Again, this is another earlier guzzler put in the 60s. Again, the bitmol style started to deteriorate, so we actually had to go through, pull it out, and then lay concrete over the top. This one has a common issue that I'd like to talk about, which is shooters. I want to say shooters versus hunters, because hunters usually realize that that's there to protect the resource, and we have a vested interest in the resource, right? We want the resource to do well so we can continue to access the resource and utilize it. Well, this one's got shots through the top of the tank, which actually poked holes through the bottom, and we had to actually excavate the tank and do repairs and then put it all back together again, which is, again, quite an undertaking. So make sure if you ever see a guzzler out there, anybody messing with the guzzler, let them know, hey, that's not there for us, or it's not our target practice. That's there for the resource. Next. Now, opportunities. So, like I said, there are a lot of opportunities for hunters that are
looks like we lost Ben.
Well,
Peter. There he is.
I'll try and channel Ben the best I can. So one of the things we do, part of our mission here at the Department of Fish and Wildlife, is to provide recreational opportunities for folks to access and enjoy the outdoors. So we do provide a number of upland bird hunting opportunities. These include the lands we own and manage, our wildlife areas, where you can typically hunt during the open seasons. We also provide a number of special hunts. We've talked about Pilibus, which is a special dove hunting opportunity. You have to apply to get drawn there. It costs less than $3, not very much to apply. And so we make that draw available, partially for safety, right? We want to limit the numbers so it's a safe hunting experience, but also enjoyable for everybody. We don't want it too crowded. Did Ben come back?
Yeah, I just made it back. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what kicked me off, but yeah, like you're saying, that a lot of it is for safety for Pilibus. It would be nice just to be able to plant the area and allow access, but just for safety reasons, that first day it would be so popular. We just want to avoid the higher potential for issues or accidents and limit the numbers on the opener. But and again, one of the reasons it's so successful is because we do plant a fruit crop and then prepare the field for hunters. So it is still an opportunity we're intentionally providing, but we're also intentionally limiting the numbers for safety reasons. So,
Ben, you were showing a picture of that tank. Where is that tank, or where was that tank?
So those were, one of them was in Fresno County on the west side in the coastal range as you're going over. And then another was in the Templars, which is Kern County as you're going over to the coast on the 58 side, or what's the nearest other town? I would say it's just, if you ever been to the Soda Lake area or Carrizo Plains, or Taft. Taft is a small town that it's fairly close to. So, and a lot of our guzzlers are they're in the more remote, arid areas because that's where they do the most help. So within our state, we actually have, or not within our state, within just our region here, we have over 1,400 guzzlers and springs that we try to maintain and inspect, usually on a 10-year cycle to try to work through the list. So there are ones that we've established as being in key locations that we try to hit almost every other year or so, just to make sure they're still functioning. The nice thing about the guzzlers is, when they put them in, they had the right idea. A concrete apron and solid tank would last 50 plus years. So that's why we try to use those same kind of ideas when we do repairs. It's like we want to go in once, and we want this guzzler to last hopefully the rest of our lives.
And these areas with the guzzlers, these desert areas, they provide great upland bird hunting.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Lots of dove hunting opportunities, lots of quail hunting. This is where most of your chukar are going to be found. Mm-hmm. So very, very good upland bird hunting. Some of the best in California in our desert areas.
Yeah. And as far as chukar goes, it's some of the best. California has some of the best chukar hunting, I would say, even in the world, depending on the year. Right? If we have a really good year in California, it's hard to say that there would be any other place anywhere that would give you access to as many birds as we do, and as many acres. I mean, we have BLM land just seems to go on and on forever almost, and a lot of that is very good upland game bird habitat. And that kind of goes back to the opportunities we provide is maintaining these guzzlers. Part of it is for the resource, and the other part of it is it provides an opportunity because it bolsters the population. Like you cannot hunt within a certain distance of a guzzler, right? You actually, while you're hunting, only have a certain amount of time to get through and away from a guzzler. Just because if you're hunting over a water source in a arid area, it's not very sportsmanlike, right? It's similar to hunting over a pile of bait seed. So this is a picture of one of our wild bird hunting locations. It's actually in Canebrake Ecological Reserve. And ecological reserves are usually set aside for a specific reason, right? It either has great ecological significance, or there are species on the area that are protected or that they want to limit traffic to or set aside. But when we set up ecological reserves, we actually have the opportunity to give access still to the public. So a lot of times when we set up, at least in Central Region, an ecological reserve, we try to account for hunting opportunity, or at least recreation opportunity. So when we set up the Canebrake Ecological Reserve, we were able to set up 3 hunts throughout the season that we can do special draws for. So this hunt, I believe, was a January hunt, and actually did pretty well. It's like I said, it depends on the year, but in a good year, it's hard to beat some of the ecological reserve, just because it's not open to hunting any other time during the year. So populations that would normally be hit fairly hard during the opening of the season, right, don't. They have very limited pressure, and you have good access to birds. So. And like I was saying, we have a good variety of upland game bird opportunities that we draw for, not just, that we draw for, but also within the state. Like I said, we have the varied habitat types, everything from the high desert. There's a picture here of Soda Lake, which is near the Carrizo Plains and our Chimeneas Ranch property that's owned by the department. We run everything from some junior quail hunts, dove hunts or upland game hunts where we do dove, quail, and rabbit during the late season. And And some of those hunts, they do things too, like, or if you come across a pig, they would allow you to take them just because there's issues with pigs on the property. But we do some special draw archery only hunts, one of which is at a park, state parks. So usually state parks are completely off limits to hunting. There's occasionally an area that they'll set aside and have special access to. We actually were able to work with Millerton Lake State Parks to write into their regulation to give us access to run a archery hunt. So that was pretty cool. So it's not that, that you got to find the right groups and the right people to support the community, right? So if you spend the time and you work with the different organizations like that I've found, you will inevitably come across somebody that is sympathetic, that is a hunter, that understands that, hey, we want to provide an opportunity to hunters and access that especially normally wouldn't happen. So, and again, we do try to provide opportunity through the planting of upland game bird fields like the safflower, sunflower, and then not just pilibus, but we also work with some of our wildlife areas to put in safflower fields, upland game bird fields, in order to again, grant access and create more opportunities for our hunters.
And as a upland game bird hunter in California, you want to make sure you are applying for these hunts. They need to be part of your preseason regimen. You go to the department's website, you look up the special wild upland game bird hunts, and you apply for those that you want to participate in, because they're, again, as Ben mentioned, these ecological reserves do not open to hunting. They're not open except for these special draws. Pilibus is not going to be open the first 2 days of the season unless you get drawn. So you want to make sure you're in the game and you are applying for these hunts. It's just part of your upland game preparation and process. You don't want to miss out on these opportunities.
All right. And then talk a little bit about our planted bird hunts. So we kind of went over the wild bird hunts as kind of a little bit more of an advanced step, because wild birds they're definitely more of a challenge, right? They're an excellent opportunity, and I wouldn't be afraid to take that opportunity, right? Even if I was a first-time hunter, you just got to expect that it's going to be a little more difficult, right? You're going to spend a little more time, and your success as far as getting a bird or getting birds may be a little less, just because of the experience level. But and then so we have that kind of first step hunts, which are our planted bird hunts, and that's kind of why we have them, is because it's a great first start, right? The wild bird hunts are a great continuation, or even a first start if you're looking for that challenge. But if you're just looking for that first step out to the field, it's pretty hard to beat some of the planted bird hunts, where we get groups in, and it's really more of a community effort. The planted hunts, a lot of times they're not in an area that's super difficult to traverse, right? We have some areas that have really good cover, like our Merced hunts. There's a couple of pictures here from Merced, one of the wildlife areas, or not wildlife areas. It's actually an area owned by the city of Merced. So the city of Merced has this area, and they allow us access. They also allow the share program access, so that they can let folks have access to hunt the area throughout the season, which is pretty cool. And like I said, this is from the city of Merced. So there's a lot of opportunities out there, not just on our property or on any of the big Bureau of Land Management property or Forest Service, but lots of the small cities and towns. I've worked with flood control districts that are very positive about giving access to hunters. And anyway, so if you're looking for that first start, the planted bird hunts are definitely a great opportunity, right? And especially when they're involved with volunteer organizations. And this is one of our more special hunts that we put on, which is a mobility impaired hunt. This hunt is usually centered around a alfalfa field, just because of the logistics of getting guys through the fields in wheelchairs. And talk about the community involvement. We have probably close to 100 volunteers come out for this event every year, right? And we usually have anywhere from 10 to 15 hunters, right? So all that in support of these hunters. And it seems a little excessive, but when you think about it, we need that volunteer base, because each hunter needs the dog handler, a guide, pushers, right? We have people come out and actually volunteer to create or do a lunch for these guys. And lots of positive inputs from a ton of different people that really don't get anything out of it other than, getting to give back to the community and to this group of hunters. So the junior actually on the right this was his first hunt. So he had gotten his hunting license before he had an accident. And he was supposed to be going out with his grandfather to go hunting, but plans had changed, right? So then they thought that they probably weren't ever going to have that opportunity again. And actually, one of the guys I worked with got in contact with him and said, "Hey, you guys should come out to this hunt." They told him about it. We got him a hunting license again, and him and his grandfather, actually, we let them both go out and hunt pheasant together. So that kind of stuff, it's all circles back to the hunting community, the things that, we can accomplish by working together. So you finished Hunter Ed. Now what, right? This is the big question, right? Where do I go from here? So kind of the who, what, when, and where of getting started. So Peter, you want to add anything or?
No, I think we're good.
Good.
We'll keep it moving.
Keep it moving. All right, let's see. Next slide. So a big resource, or who are the resources that you'll need to know or get to know in order to get started in upland game bird hunting. So like I said, the hunting community, fellow hunters, is a big one, right? 99% of us out there, well, we love what we're doing, right? We love going out in the field. We're passionate about it. And when you find other people that are interested in it, you'll be hard pressed to get us to stop talking about it. So go out there, get to know your local hunt clubs, community, organizers, and just talk to folks. If you have questions, those are a great resource. The local unit biologists or the upland game bird biologists that are employed by CDFW are also a great resource. They spend a ton of time on the ground in the field, working with the resource. So questions, anything from, recommendations on shot size for us to, what times of the year, what areas, local information as far as, how are things doing this year? We're, a lot of times it may take a day or two to respond depending on the unit and what's going on. The unit folks spend a lot of time in the field doing backpacking stuff and everything from radar telemetry work to collar work to everything in between. So, but they're definitely there as a resource and usually always happy to talk to you if you have any questions. Sporting groups and volunteers, like I said, another great resource. And sporting groups may not necessarily just be limited to hunting sporting groups. We have our local ranges, right? Have a number of sporting groups that, they have similar interests, right? They have similar goals, and a lot of times they're a great resource as far as specifics on firearms, ammunition availability, that kind of stuff. And as we've seen, it's been increasingly difficult, especially for certain shot sizes, to find the availability of ammunition. We were just talking about that earlier as far as gaining access to ammunition in California. We have to start planning earlier and start working to make sure we have what we need for the seasons that are coming up. And then staff that oversees public lands. These are the folks that, along with private landers, that you definitely want to be on their good side. So, and with any agency, there's a diverse staff that may have different interests, may have different goals or different program goals, but majority of the public lands folks are geared up towards granting access, right? They want the public to have access to their own lands to utilize it, right? So whether that means hiking, camping, fishing, or hunting, right? If you come across the right person, again, that has similar interests or that wants to get people out there, you'd be hard pressed to get them to stop talking about it. So, and so it's good to know the lands that are around you, and then what entity or what organization oversees those lands, because it's a completely different structure of rules and regulations depending on the ownership is a big part of it. and private landowners. So private landowners can be a difficult to resource to come across, right? Because a lot of times you don't know who owns a piece of property unless you run across them on the property. So a lot of times it takes a little research, or it takes some time to come across or meet those people, make introductions. But it's important not to write private lands off entirely, because a lot of times it just takes a conversation or an introduction to get you access, right? Get you a little written access card or something saying, hey, you have permission to hunt on my property. And then again, a big part of that is being as polite as possible. So things like when you enter the field, make sure you bring any trash out once you enter it. If you leave any shot shells, make sure you pick up the shot shells when you leave, that kind of stuff. So a little bit of polite conversation goes a long way, especially with land.
And most of us who are avid upland bird hunters, we hunt a combination of public land and private land. And there's various opportunities to hunt private land as well. So, we try and do both. And you can also, if you get some birds off, a private piece of property or a rancher or something, you can also offer, nice gesture, offer those birds or some of those birds, a part of that bird, if it's a turkey, to the landowner as a thanks. And you certainly want to clean the bird and make it all nice for them, so they can enjoy it as well. And you'll probably be invited back.
There you go. I'm back, I think. There we go.
Yeah. Conservation groups are on there. That's a good one. Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever come to mind. Those are national nonprofit groups, but they do have local chapters in California. And so those are good ways to connect with fellow upland bird hunters. And they do some habitat projects, some fundraisers, and you'll meet some other folks and may get some hunting invitations and learn about some areas to hunt where you live. And if you're going to get into dogs, it's one of the beauties of upland bird hunting. It's great for hunting dogs. And there's lots of dog training groups and clubs, and that can be a year-round activity, even outside of hunting season.
All right, I think I'm back. Okay, so another great question is, what areas are you most interested in? So like we were talking about earlier, California has a ton of awesome habitat types that range from everything from the coastal stuff all the way to our high desert. So it depends on what you're looking for, whether it's a North Coast forested area, the high Sierras, which are gorgeous. Valley floors would provide a ton of upland game bird hunting opportunity, everything from quail to dove, right? The big ones. Oak woodlands is a great habitat for our quail populations, and so are wetlands. And like I said, the farmlands are hard to beat as far as access to dove hunting opportunities.
Some of our upland birds, are wilderness birds, and some are not. Some are, in farmlands and agricultural areas, as Ben talked about. So you can really, you'll pursue those birds that speak to you, speak to your soul, whether, you love hiking through the forest or the oak woodlands. You'll kind of gravitate towards those species and those habitats where you enjoy spending the most time. And that'll kind of, you should try everything, but you'll kind of, gravitate to those experiences and those environments that really speak to who you are and what you like to do outdoors. We probably should mention, right now the forests in California are all closed, the national forests, unfortunately, due to the wildfires and wildfire threats. So the national forests are a great resource typically when they're not closed to upland bird hunting, specifically, our quail species, mountain quail, valley quail, but also our forest grouse species. We have rough grouse and sooty grouse. So definitely a loss not having those open to us as hunters, but also loss for the habitat and any birds we lose as a result of fires.
Mm-hmm. Nope. Did we skip one? There we go. So what upland birds and what style of hunting most interests you? So again, we are blessed with, additionally to having the different habitat types, we have a huge variety of different types of upland game bird hunting that you can do within the region. Migratory birds are one of the most popular because mourning dove is probably the most popular hunted species in the state, just period, right? Even with big game and everything else, I think there are more people that hunt upland game birds' mourning dove than probably all other game species. So the white wings, which are a little less common in the Central Valley, and snipe, which I think Peter can tell you about snipe actually being a real bird that exists.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun to hunt, snipe. Quick comment on the photo. Those are barbecued mourning doves. I know Tish mentioned poppers. Everyone loves their dove poppers. But I actually cook my doves whole. I mean, I pick them clean. I don't just use the breast. Upland game birds, when you cook them, they can be very dry. So if you can leave the skin on, it keeps them moist, keeps them moist. So those are barbecued mourning doves, and definitely a lot of people's favorite game bird to eat are doves. Another reason why they're so popular. And good things come in small packages. Takes a few of them to make a meal, but the limit's 15, and so that's pretty good, the daily limit. And so it's a great bird to eat.
Yeah. And super lean and a very, very good flavor, very light. So probably one of my favorite, although I think my favorite still is quail. Quail is very high on my list. Stuffed quail and pheasant tamales.
Hard to beat quail, hard to beat pheasant. Photo right, that's a picture of Grace again and myself out hunting wild pheasants at the Grizzly Island Wildlife Area during pheasant season. I noticed they never show my face in any of these pictures. I don't know if I should be self-conscious about that or not. But again, when you're hunting kind of our resident game birds, right? These are birds that don't really migrate long distances like a dove or a snipe. They more or less spend their lives in a small area. And you typically, you go for a hike for these birds, right? You're hiking with a shotgun. And if you're lucky, you have a good bird dog with you. That's my chocolate lab, Grace. And you're out there walking for them and looking for them. Very different than dove hunting, where kind of you pick a good spot and the birds are coming there to feed or roost or flying by. The resident birds, the quail, you're typically the grouse. You're hiking and looking for them. And it's great to have a dog that will help find those for you. When I was Liam's age, about 12 years old, I really didn't get upland bird hunting. It seemed impossible to me. We didn't have a dog, and so we would hike all day in this heavy cover. And when you were exhausted and tired, some pheasant would explode at your feet and scare you to death. And you'd have about a second to shoot at it before it'd fly away, and you never could hit it. And the whole experience just seemed impossible. Like, how does anyone do this? But the game changes. You get a good bird dog. You don't need one, of course. People do just fine without one, but to me, it adds a lot more fun. And they will help you find birds. They'll let you know if birds are nearby. They'll certainly help retrieve and find a bird if you get one. So a lot of us, myself included, like to upland bird hunt just for our dogs, because our dogs enjoy it so much. It's really nothing better than hiking around with your dog out in some beautiful places. Again, that slide was just to show you the wide diversity of upland species you can hunt in California.
Okay, so the other big question we get is, when can I hunt? Like, well, when can I go dove hunting? When can I go quail hunting or pheasant hunting? And then when should I start planning? So a great resource is our website. In this case, there's a list of all the different game types, huntable species, everything from elk to bighorn. And under the upland game tab, you can actually go by different species and see, pheasant, quail, the start and stop dates. And usually a good buffer time is about 2 months, right? Especially for the application processes, you want to start at least 2 months prior to look for whatever applications for whatever special hunts you want to apply for during the seasons, and then look for any public lands or access through, the share program to hunt any other areas that you might be interested in. And this, like I said, it's a great resource. It's updated fairly regularly as far as the season start and stop dates. And a lot of times you can plan for the next season based on the dates from this season. So you just predict, a lot of times it's always that third Saturday in November or such. So you can start planning for your next hunt season based on the dates that are listed for the current seasons. So a lot of times it's nice just to have, if you're if you're interested in continuing on and hunting from year to year, it's nice to have that kind of yearly calendar that you'll develop as far as, okay, I know at this time of year, I start applying for special hunts. I know at this time of year, I got to start planning ahead and getting my ammunition and gear and stuff set up that I'm going to need for the following hunt season. And most importantly, where can I hunt? This is probably the number one question that at least I get throughout the year, especially for new hunters coming in. It's like, well, I have all the basic information down. I've went out and I've broken some clays. I think I'm ready to take that next step. And now, where can I hunt? Right? I even participated in a special hunt along the way, right? But now I want to start to go out there and start looking for other locations to start hunting on my own. Well, the big access in California is usually public lands. So public lands are owned by a variety, they're owned by us, but they're ran by a variety of organizations, right? So they're ran by, and by us I mean the public, not CDFW. So we have the Forest Service property, like our national forest, which currently are, you were talking about the fires earlier, you'll have to pay attention, especially in California, whether they're open or closed. I don't know if we talked about earlier, there's a website that you can check the status or closure status for those properties due to the fires. And then there are CDFW wildlife areas, which allow access based on, number of days. A lot of times the wildlife or the waterfowl areas are geared more towards waterfowl, so they're open usually Saturdays and Wednesdays. Some of the areas are actually unstaffed and self-check-in, right? So there's a variety of department-owned properties and a variety of different access levels. So, and then National Wildlife Refuge are another huge resource in California. They're not as many as there are department-owned stuff. And then, like I was saying, the Bureau of Land Management is probably the largest continuous landholder, right up there with the national forests. And again, public lands continue. We have our state parks, which you're saying usually don't allow any kind of hunting or firearms access, but depending on the park, there are usually special programs, or sometimes there's locations within the park or next to the park that they set aside to allow hunting access. So it's important not to just write them off, and not to mention the fact that the state parks folks are usually abutted to Forest Service or BLM property. And the state parks folks staff know that property, know their land, and know the surrounding land. So sometimes they're just a good resource to have, just to have somebody to talk to. Hey, I'm interested in hunting the area. I noticed that I can camp here. Are there any areas that are close or near the park that are open to hunting? And usually it's a great resource, a great person to talk to just because of their local knowledge. Army Corps of Engineers is actually another excellent resource. They have a ton of property around the lakes that are usually mostly open to hunting. And again, a lot of their goals are aligned with granting access to the lake and to the property around it for recreation. And whether that be, putting in a new disc golf course or planting safflower to improve hunting, right? That's one of their main goals that kind of coincides with ours, is to get people out, get people in the resource, because you never get more support than when you have a vested interest in that resource. And then, like I was talking about earlier, some of the public parks and recs or local county commissions have properties within that county that are open to hunting or open to the public. So it's another interesting resource. I've also been able to get in contact with some of the flood control districts or the irrigation districts. And a lot of times they're a good resource for finding places to access to hunt, especially if they're, local to you. I found that, you live in Sanger, you call the irrigation district and say, hey, I live in this area. Is there anywhere near me that's your guys' property that we could hunt? And then our ALDS special hunts is another great resource for finding locations that are open to hunting, because a lot of times the hunts that we draw for are usually during the prime opener or a certain event, but a lot of times those locations are continued through the rest of the season to be hunted. So Excellent.
Yeah, and I'll touch on some private land opportunities because, again, most of us who are avid upland bird hunters have both. We hunt both private land and public land. And just because, you don't have an uncle with a, 10,000 acre cattle ranch, or you live in the middle of the city, don't think you can't get access to private land, because you can. And so here are a few of those opportunities. And talked about the SHARE program. This is a unique California Department of Fish and Wildlife program that provides public hunting access to private properties. It's very limited. I mean, it's through a lottery process through the ALDS website. You can search the SHARE program on the CDFW website and see all the different hunts. It started off kind of as a big game hunting opportunity, but over the years, they've added more upland game bird hunts. So now there's dove hunts, there's quail hunts, there's turkey hunts. So if you get drawn for one of these hunts, you typically, you're the only person or a friend, a guest, maybe two people, you have access to an entire piece of private property just to yourself. I won a SHARE quail hunt a couple of years ago, and I had this whole beautiful ranch in Santa Barbara County to myself to hunt by myself. And the landowner gave me a tour before we went hunting in his quad and showed me around and told me where to go. And the morning spot wasn't very good. So he, as I kind of took a break for lunch, he went out and drove around his ranch and found some quail for me and said, try over here. And then we got into the quail. So those are really exceptional opportunities. So I would make sure those are part of your kind of preseason preparation, applying for those SHARE program bird hunts that may interest you, and also the CDFW wild bird hunts. Talked about their licensed private game bird clubs in California. They're licensed by CDFW, typically have a longer season. You can hunt sometimes 6 months or longer, where the wild bird seasons will be shorter. They're typically planted birds, but again, you can make those places what you want. You can have an easy hunt, leisurely hunt, or you can make it very hard, hunt the fringes of the property and you have more of a wild bird experience. So they're great if you have a hunting dog and you put a lot of time and effort and expense into training your hunting dog. That's a place to take your dog. So that's another option. Community pheasant co-ops, not as many around as there used to be. There's a few of them still. Willows is a big one. Pixley down Southern California is another. Meridian up in the valley is another. And these are fundraisers where the whole community gets together and opens up their farm fields to pheasant hunting during the wild pheasant season. They typically supplement the wild birds nowadays with planted birds, but you get access to these farm fields. Typically only costs a couple $100, $200, $250, and you have a place to hunt for the entire pheasant season, and these are going to be on private agricultural fields. Timberlands, again, private timber companies generously open up much of their forest land to hunting. There's a couple big timber companies in Northern California that do this. Unfortunately, this year they've closed their properties because of the wildfire threat and the wildfire. So that's not an option this year, but something to consider. Pacific Gas and Electric has some properties that they open up to hunting. Not all of them, so you need to call and check, but in the North State, they have some very good quail hunting on their property. So these are opportunities to hunt private land. If you're going to be a serious upland bird hunter, you want all the opportunities you can. They're different. They're each special. Private land, public land. One's not necessarily better than the other. You just, you want to make the most of the opportunities. So you don't want to rule out private land going forward. We mentioned much of these licenses, ammunition, good boots. OnX is interesting. It's an app for your phone and typically used mostly by big game hunters. And it shows you who owns properties and where public land ends and private land starts. And I think it even gives you the property, the information, the private landowner contact information. I don't have OnX yet. It's on my to-do list to get it, but they do have a whole upland bird division as part of OnX. It's a private company, and so they're really ramping up their upland bird information on that. So that's something to consider as well. Bird dog again. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I said, yeah, I've had the opportunity of using Onyx and a number of other apps that are in that same kind of category. I'd say they're, as a whole, they're a great resource. My favorite thing about them is that you can download the maps onto your phone prior, to going to that area. And even if you don't have cell signal, you'll still have your GPS location displayed on that map and have all your topography. So if you're doing upland game hunting in the desert and you're moving through an area, it's a great resource to have, that or any of the other apps that are in that kind of same category that you can pull that information off prior to going out. It's a great resource to have, along with a good paper map and a compass, because I can't help myself, I'm a little bit old school sometimes.
Yeah, bird dog, gun dog, we get this question a lot. Do you need a dog to go upland bird hunting? No, you don't need a dog. Some folks do quite well without a dog. Sometimes no dog is better than a bad dog or a mediocre dog, which can actually mess up your hunting. If you've never hunted behind a good upland bird dog, it's, you can do it through those apprentice pheasant hunts or perhaps at a licensed game bird club. It's an incredible experience. Human beings have a long relationship with animals, obviously, that span the gamut, but there's not too many activities where, a dog or an animal and a human being share the same passion for something. And so when you have a good hunting dog, they like to hunt more than you do. They will inspire you. They will go through anything to find you that bird. And it's quite an experience. It's quite a tremendous bond that develops. And so if you have a chance to hunt behind somebody or with somebody who has a good dog, there's all different kinds of dogs and there's all different kinds of flavors. So that's one of the real joys of upland bird hunting, I think. And they can, certainly a good dog will certainly, increase your success and just your overall enjoyment, even if you don't get a bird, and you've been out pheasant hunting with your dog, walking through some beautiful country. That's a great way to spend a day. The dog had a good time. You had a good time. You got some exercise. We're out in some beautiful country, even if you were unsuccessful. That's a great day in my book. Mm-hmm. Camel or blaze orange? We get this question a lot. Some upland bird hunting, you really don't want to wear blaze orange. It's a nice safety feature. Of course, some places require it. But some species like dove, you're trying to hide. You're trying to, if they see you, they will fly away from you or stay away from you or stay out of range. Turkeys, similar, very good eyesight. You're trying to hide and not let them see you. If you're hunting those resident species we talked about, quail or pheasant, you're actually trying to get those birds to fly. They prefer to live on the ground. They prefer to run. You're actually trying to force them and trap them and get them to fly. So in those cases, blaze orange is great. It's an important safety feature. People can see you if there's other hunters around. Some licensed game bird clubs, for example, will require it. So it's a very important, safety. Any upland bird hunter is going to have orange as part of their repertoire, part of their hunting clothes. But there are times you want it and times you don't.
And that's for a lot of our special hunts. It's required, like for especially the apprentice hunts, the family hunts, it's required. And then we also require at least all junior hunters and recommend for all hunters to wear some kind of eye protection. So it's a big one for if you're coming to any of the hunts, just make sure you have a decent pair of safety glasses and blaze orange. We usually have some to loan out, although the last year or so we haven't been loaning things out just because of the COVID issues. But so if you're drawn for any of the special hunts, it'll be in the paperwork too. Just remember to grab a good blaze orange or hat or jacket, depending on the hunt type, and then make sure you have a good pair of safety glasses.
Some good opportunities to highlight at the end. Wild turkeys. Plenty of opportunities both on private land and public land. We have CDFW offers a number of wild turkey hunts on its properties. The SHARE program offers a number of hunts. It's really kind of a unique upland game bird experience. It's much more like big game hunting, like elk or something. You're typically, it's just a huge bird. You're Calling can be very important. Camouflage is very important. You're not going to want to wear, any bright colored clothing when you're turkey hunting. This is a picture of my son, my 13-year-old who was turkey hunting. He actually got 3 turkeys last year. Nice. I actually don't know how he got any of them, because when a big tom turkey starts showing interest in his decoy or his calling, he gets so nervous and excited, he physically starts shaking and trembling. And I don't know how he even manages to get a turkey, but he does. He loves it. But it's a real heart-pounding experience that you don't normally encounter in upland bird hunting so much. So it's great if you're into archery. It's a great opportunity for that. So we have growing populations, as anybody in California can tell you. We see more and more turkeys. They're very good to eat, very delicious, very challenging to hunt. Turkeys are smart. They know when there's danger and when there's not. And when there's no danger, when it's out of season or they're in town, they'll just casually make themselves at home, at the golf course or the business park or in the middle of town. But when hunting season happens and they know they're being hunted, they are incredibly smart and incredibly wary, and they know the difference. They know when there's danger and they know when there's not. So it's interesting how their behaviors change, according to the perceived danger.
Yeah, again, it is like, especially with turkey, you have the variety of different hunting methods, right? So you can set up in a stand and do your calls, or you can stalk and pursue the game. So it gives you more options and more opportunities to hunt different hunt styles, different types.
Yep, and we have 2 turkey seasons, just like we have 2 dove seasons. We talked about the September 1st opener and the hot weather. Well, we have a second dove season that begins November 13th, and it's great. November 13th is a very big day. It's the second Saturday in November, and it's a very big day on the bird hunting calendar, because by November 13th, pretty much every bird that's available to be hunted in California, their season is open. We're talking geese, we're talking ducks, we're talking doves, we're talking quail, we're talking almost everything is available. So you have a lot of options. It's a great time to be a bird hunter. Second turkey season opens, but why it's great for doves is because everybody's off doing other things. They're chasing pheasants, they're duck hunting, they're quail hunting. And so all those crowded dove fields like Pilibus, they're not so crowded anymore, and the weather's cooler. It's much more pleasant to be out. And again, lots of public land opportunities here. The birds can group up and provide some fast action with a lot less competition. So something to keep in the back of your mind when everyone's out chasing other species, doing other things in the fall. Don't overlook that second dove season. Mm-hmm. Snipe, they do exist. Ben is a biologist, will verify that. They are a very fun species to hunt. You hunt them. They're the only shorebird we can actually hunt in California. So they're a shorebird species, and they typically live in wetlands environment. So there's great public hunting on all of our wildlife areas that have great duck and goose hunting, right? They occupy the same sort of wetland habitat, and they use their bills to kind of probe for worms and different things in the soft soil. And you hunt them kind of like you do a pheasant. They're on the ground typically when you encounter them and you're walking through the wetlands, and they'll kind of flush up when you get close. Very challenging, very hard to shoot just because they're small, fast. They fly very erratically. Delicious on the table, great eating. Again, like doves or quail. Takes a few of them to get a meal, but they're definitely worth the effort. You won't have any competition. If you say you're going snipe hunting, people will look at you like you're crazy. But so that's the joy of it, right? You don't have all the competition you do, let's say, dove hunting or duck hunting. You do have to be very good at identifying them. There are lots of shorebirds of the same size, same color, that look kind of similar to snipe. So you have to kind of make sure you know what you're doing, and maybe go with somebody who's experienced for the first couple of times. And then you'll kind of see what a snipe looks like versus other shorebirds. Some people don't go snipe hunting just for that fact. They're afraid of shooting the wrong shorebird by mistake, so they stay away from it. But they're pretty easy to identify once you get the hang of it. So go a few times if you can with somebody who's done it before, and they'll help you get the identification thing down. And they're a lot of fun. Again, it's an opportunity not many people pursue snipe, but it's really fun. You won't have much competition, and another great game bird to eat too. Ben's favorite.
Yes. No, the Eurasian collared dove is actually a double-edged sword, right? It's a great opportunity to get out there and hunt something that has no bag limit, right? And as many as you get, don't feel bad. You shoot as many as you can, as far as I'm concerned. So they are an invasive species, so there's no limit on the number you can take when you can hunt them year-round, which means you can have, something to actually go out and hunt year-round. So a lot of times with upland game hunters, usually they don't get behind a shotgun. They don't actually have the opportunity to shoulder something and swing on something until dove season, right? So you have that big gap from the end of either quail season or January-ish until you hit turkey season is not really the same style of hunting and the same mechanics, so you have that big gap. But with Eurasian collared dove, if you have an area that maybe has dairies are pretty popular, any area with structure, wineries, you'll end up getting a pretty healthy population of Eurasians. The only downside is you just want to be able to make sure that they are actually Eurasians, which if you spend enough time around dove, it's pretty obvious. I mean, the way they fly, the size, coloration, even in the air, you can distinguish that separation between the two pretty easily. So,
and I want to follow up on Ben's point too. There is that gap when hunting season ends, where you put your shotgun down and you go through that lull where you do other things throughout the year. But I'm going to stress, I've taken a number of first-time hunters out, a number of kids out on early hunting experiences. And you really do want to practice with your shotgun. You want to make your shotgun your best friend. So many times, I've taken people out or gone hunting, or even saw it Wednesday at Pillibus. You have these new hunters, and God, they got the Pillibus draw, right? It's the lottery for upland bird hunters. And it's a great year. There are doves everywhere. There are doves like mosquitoes. But they haven't practiced with their shotgun. They can't hit anything. They've got the clothes, they've got the gear. They're shooting at birds out of range, and it turns into what should be just the hunt of a lifetime or a memorable hunt. It turns into a frustrating experience because they're just not able to hit anything. And I see it quite commonly when I take people out, and they're into the food and they really want to eat the wild game, and they're chefs and they cook and this and that. And what should be a great day of field, turns into a little bit of a frustrating day because they just miss bird after bird after bird. And, so spend some time at the range, get familiar with their shotgun. If it, take a lesson, join a summer league if you have a shooting range, get a gun fitted. Buying a shotgun is like buying a suit of clothes at Nordstrom. It's not going to fit you right off the rack. It's going to need some adjustments, right? Just like that suit of clothes will need some tailoring. So spend some time. It's hard. Hunting wild birds is hard. That's what people don't understand. It's really hard. And that's why we get excited when we have a good hunt or have some success. So make sure you spend some time shooting so you can, make the most of the opportunities when you have time to hunt or when they happen.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, the old saying is true, right? How do you get to Carnegie Hall, right? Practice, practice, practice. And like with anything else, if you want to be good at something, you need to practice. A lot of times I've come across hunters the same as you that say, what, I'm a bad shot. And I'm like, well, you know what the difference is between a bad shot and a good shot? Practice. Get out there and shoot that rifle, shoot that shotgun. Just get behind it, swing on things, go out, join your local range is an excellent recommendation, because the more time you spend looking down that barrel, the better off you're going to be.
And once upon a time in California, you could learn to become a good wind shot just by hunting a lot. But, those game populations aren't quite what they were. And so you need to spend some time shooting some clays in the off season.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in, guys. I let you go over. We started late. And I knew that you were getting to the descriptions of some of the species that people had been waiting for, but we have some questions coming in too. And I think we're going to get kicked out of Zoom in like 5 minutes.
Sure.
So I wanted to try to get to them. So we had some coming in, and first one, what is a good upland species to start your upland experience with going and hunting? Would it be dove, or what would you suggest to someone?
I think for the first upland species, I would recommend something like a pheasant, because pheasant are, especially if you haven't had the time to spend on the range to get dialed in, pheasants are a little slower moving, a little bit of a bigger target, and they're an excellent bird to eat, right? So you get kind of the best of everything, and it gives you a good opportunity.
Oh, right. And we talked a lot about private lands and some of the great hunting opportunities that are there. Now, is private land usually well distinguished out in the field, or is it best to really study the land? I mean, obviously, yes, you want to study the land and kind of scout before you go hunting, but how does someone know if they're accidentally stumble upon private land?
You'll pretty much know in California because everything's fenced
all the signs
and signed, and it'll be pretty obvious, I would think, if you're transitioning from public land to private land.
Yeah, and the general rule is, unless an area is fenced, actively under cultivation, or posted, you should be able to hunt that area, right? Because they can't issue you a citation, even if it was private, because it's also somewhat up to the landowner to make sure it's either fenced, actively under cultivation, or posted.
Okay.
Right? That being said, we should do our best not to trespass and do our research. But if that's the case, and you accidentally stumble across something, you wouldn't be liable for a citation if, like you said, it wasn't fenced, it wasn't under cultivation, and it wasn't signed.
Yeah. All right. And I know we also talked about planting for upland species. Do we plant up at Orville? Someone said they thought they read that for dove.
Yeah, Orville's a little out of my area, but yeah, I last time I spoke to anybody up there, they do plant for some of the upland hunts. They have upland fields. They may not plant the same species or same species of safflower or whatnot, but they do plant sometimes wheat, winter wheat, and things like that.
Orville does plant. I was up there this spring. They plant a mix of safflower, sunflower, for doves primarily, even though that habitat's used by other birds and other species. Interestingly, while a lot of our wildlife areas will produce a map showing you where to go dove hunting and location of their food plots, Orville does not. Orville rewards scouting, meaning hunters who actually put in the time, pre-season or with their binoculars, driving around, looking for the fields, looking where the birds are. They reward those folks by making it a little bit harder. You can't just show up expecting to stumble onto the field. You're gonna have to, do your homework a little bit at Orville. It's a great spot.
All right. So one last question. Are there any second half of the season dove special hunts? You said it was a good time to go. A lot of people would kind of be already moving on to other things. Is there good? Okay.
We have a hunt at Chimeneas Ranch, which we did have to cancel the earlier season hunt at that location because of the fires. But there's a late season hunt that will include quail, dove, rabbit, and the opportunity for a pig if they come across them. All in the same hunt. And the reason we can do that is because the area is so large that the safety issues aren't quite there. Smaller areas, we would never hunt pig along with upland game birds, but because it's 100 square miles of property, people can disperse themselves enough to not have an issue. Yeah.
All right. Well, for everyone that's tuning in with us, we're going to be sending out an email that has all of the links to different websites and CDFW web pages that Ben and Peter mentioned. We'll also send you their entire slideshow so that if you wanted to focus on something or learn a little or read a little bit more about different species, you'll have that there as well. If you didn't get your questions answered, I know we had a lot of them coming in. Please remember, you can always find resources on our R3 webpage, or again, once I send you that email, just go ahead and respond back. I'm going to be giving you Peter and Ben's email as well, so you can ask them questions directly if you want to do that as well. So please join our next few R3H3 sessions. We're going to be having conversation on ocean fishing, a look at basics for piers, jetties, and crab fishing opportunities in California. That's going to be on September 17th, and then an introduction to duck calls and decoys on October 1st. A huge thank you to Peter and Ben for being here with us, and all of you, our huddlers, for taking time out of your day to make yourselves the best hunters, anglers, foragers, and shooting sports experts that you can be. Have a great day and a wonderful Labor Day weekend, everyone. Bye.
Happy hunting.
Happy hunting. Yep.